Greetings at Cheating Story Lab. Earlier, I used to think that love meant shielding each other's vulnerabilities. Now I realize it can turn them into weapons. I am Blake, and for 6 years, I endured as my wife Corinne transformed the most tender instance of our relationship into her preferred joke at family gatherings. The evening I asked for her hand on that Ocean View beach, with trembling hands and an emotive voice, she recounted it to her parents, siblings, friends in a manner that made my vulnerability appear pitiful. She would mimic my stutter, laugh about my near drop of the ring. On each anniversary of that proposal, April 14th, she'd bring it up again. I initially assumed she was merely thoughtless. I contemplated if she didn't comprehend how much those moments pained me, but I was mistaken about many things. The first instance of this happened 3 months post our wedding at her parents' residence. At the dinner table, Esther had prepared pot roast. Foster was discussing his hardware store while Corinne recounted how Blake proposed, causing a shake that seemed like a seizure. Everyone chuckled, and I blushed but joined in. Compromise, I thought, meant surrendering minor inconveniences. In her speech, Corinne wiped away tears as she described the overly cheesy speech Blake had prepared, only managing to get through half before giving up and handing me the ring instead. More laughter ensued. I glanced at my food. The pot roast now resembled sand, a pattern that continued at each family gathering, dinner party, or holiday. April 14th would arrive, and Corinne would remind everyone of Blake's proposal fiasco, with details growing more elaborate over time and my nervousness becoming the butt of jokes. The romantic ambience faded in significance compared to my incapacity. 3 times I asked her to cease recounting the proposal tale. While returning from her cousin's wedding, I eventually voiced, "Corinne, could you perhaps avoid retelling the proposal story? It makes me uneasy." She stared at me as if I had requested her to halt respiration. "What? Why? Everyone cherishes that story. I understand it's amusing, but it dredges up a personal and vulnerable moment for me." "Blake, you're being overly sensitive. It's merely a humorous anecdote. No one regards you differently." However, each time she recounted it, I felt my self-worth diminish. I began to dread family gatherings. Whenever April appeared, I would tense up, anticipating her bringing up the subject. In the 4th year, she narrated the story at my own mother's birthday party. My mom exhibited discomfort. My sister diverted the conversation. Corinne seemed unaware or uncaring. I began to ponder what other aspects of me she ridiculed when I wasn't around. What else had she turned into amusement? In the 5th year, something changed. During Easter dinner at her parents' house, Corinne recounted her proposal story once more, revealing a fresh detail. The most intriguing aspect was that Pierce, the colleague from my workplace, had indeed been there during that weekend. Remember Pierce? He happened to be at the same resort for a conference, and we encountered him at breakfast the following morning. I made Blake retell the whole story again, and this time Pierce couldn't help but burst into laughter. I became motionless. Previously, I had perceived Pierce as being overly friendly with Corinne, but I had dismissed such thoughts as insecurities, jealousies, or toxicity of controlling husbands. However, now I found myself pondering if Pierce was at the same resort where I had proposed. Strangely, Corinne hadn't mentioned that before, not even once in the past 5 years. I questioned her, and she simply dismissed it as a mere coincidence. "Ah, just a small world," she said. After dinner, I couldn't shake off this uneasiness. In the vehicle, I questioned, "At what specific point did you encounter Pierce that weekend?" To which she replied, "I can't recall, Blake. It was 5 years ago. Why does it matter? You were the one who insisted I share the proposal story with him. Are you genuinely upset about this? It seemed amusing to me." Pierce found it endearing. However, there was a tense note in your voice that hadn't been present before, and you held the steering wheel excessively tightly. Upon reaching home, I did something I had never done before. I waited until Corinne was in the shower, then I opened her laptop. My hands were trembling more than they had when I proposed. I felt filthy, invasive, as if I was morphing into someone I didn't want to be. But that comment about Pierce had burrowed itself in my mind like a splinter. Her email was already open. I looked for Pierce's name. The first email was from 3 weeks ago. "Excited for the weekend. Your husband remains clueless." My sight narrowed. I clicked on the email chain. It stretched back months. 6-year-old emails revealed a series of casual discussions about meetings evolved into flirting, escalating into elaborate planning. Hotel rooms served as secret venues, lunch breaks stretched beyond schedule, and a Seattle trip, initially claimed as a conference, concealed deceit. As I scrolled back, the messages traced back to the week following our engagement. An email from Pierce to Corinne, "I thought we agreed you were going to wait." Her response, "Everyone was watching when Blake proposed, and I just went with it." Their assurance, "We can figure this out. It doesn't change anything between us. Spending 2 hours reading those emails, the truth unfolded, rewriting 6 years of my marriage. The seemingly romantic weekend of my proposal was not a coincidence. Pierce had been there, invited by Corinne. Their affair started before our engagement, hidden within every business trip, late work night, and moments when she claimed exhaustion to avoid discussing our relationship. She lived two lives. She scoffed at my suggestion because it was inconvenient, as it interfered with whatever plans she had. Subsequently, she and Pierce did something. My affection for her seemed to hinder their construction of whatever they were constructing. I didn't argue with her that night. A sense warned me that would be a blunder. Instead, I closed the laptop and went to bed, listening to my wife sleep soundly next to me while my entire world crumbled. The following morning, I called in sick to work. Corinne kissed me on the forehead. Indeed, she kissed me, and said she hoped I felt better before leaving for her day. As soon as her car departed from our driveway, I contacted a lawyer. His name was Barrett, and he had managed my colleague's divorce 2 years prior. I sat in his office at 9:30 in the morning and shared everything with him. He listened without interruption, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he asked, "Do you want to save this marriage?" "No," I replied. "Good," he said. To execute what follows, it necessitates your full dedication to resolving this matter decisively and comprehensively. He elaborated that emotional affairs, including those sustained over a prolonged period, held minimal significance in no-fault divorce jurisdictions. However, if you could demonstrate financial dishonesty, if Corinne had misused marital funds for her affair or concealed money, or made decisions that negatively impacted you financially, this would alter the situation. If you could meticulously document everything, you could shape the narrative. Barrett advised, don't reveal your knowledge to her. Instead, maintain your usual conduct and start gathering evidence. Examine bank statements, credit card bills, calendar entries. If she has been dishonest about work trips, obtain proof. If she's used joint funds for hotels or gifts, trace these expenses. You aim to enter this process with an ironclad case. Over the next 4 months, I transformed into a detective in my own marriage. I established a concealed folder on our shared computer to save her emails. I scrutinized our credit card statements and found charges for restaurants I hadn't visited. I compared hotels in cities that she claimed to have stayed in with her coworkers, aligning her calendar with Pierce's LinkedIn posts, and found matching periods. These were weekends when both were absent from social media, later posting photos taken in the same city. I discovered receipts for jewelry she hadn't worn before, lingerie missing from our bedroom, and a hotel booking on our anniversary last year during my visit to my dying grandmother. The mockery of our proposal took on a new significance. It seemed she had never valued it, and I was the one she'd orchestrated things around. Every time she told that story, she was reminding herself, possibly Pierce and perhaps others, that I was oblivious to what everyone else apparently saw. However, I was now aware, and I was crafting something unexpected from the man who had stumbled through his proposal. Additionally, I began seeing a therapist named Dr. Coleman. To find someone who could assist me in managing my newfound knowledge without collapsing or revealing it to Corinne was crucial. Dr. Coleman taught me techniques for compartmentalization, how to chat over dinner with my wife, knowing she spent her lunch break with another man, how to flash a smile at family events while secretly rehearsing the moment I'd expose this intricate deception. April 14th rolled around once more, our 6th proposal anniversary. Corinne's parents often invited us for Sunday dinner as they did most weekends. I knew what was imminent. True to form, midway through dessert, Esther commented, "Blake, it's hard to believe you and Corinne have been married 6 years. Corinne beamed. She couldn't help herself. "What's even more astonishing, Mom, is that Blake managed to propose without fainting. Remember I told you about him? In fact," I cut in. My tone was composed, rehearsed. I had rehearsed this moment numerous times in my mind. Corinne's smile momentarily wavered. "Not now, Blake," she replied. "Actually, it seems like the ideal time." I extracted a manila folder from my bag, keeping it there for weeks in anticipation of this moment. Since then, seeing as tonight is the anniversary of when I proposed to Corinne, I explained, "I believe it's fitting," Foster expressed concern. "Son, what's transpiring?" I unveiled the folder, revealing printouts of emails between Corinne and Pierce, meticulously arranged by date over a 6-year period. The crucial sections were emphasized, the ones discussing that weekend, their plans, and my role in them. "For 6 years, Corinne has joked about how I proposed," I stated. Remarkably, my hands didn't tremble. She had often recounted to this group her stories of my nervousness, my stuttering, my awkward appearance. However, she's never disclosed that Pierce from her workplace was at the resort not by chance. but because she had invited him. I pushed the initial email towards Foster. After 4 months together, I proposed and she agreed, mainly due to the spectators and the embarrassment of refusal. Yet for 6 years, she ridiculed that moment as my love was an inconvenience to her. Corinne's complexion paled upon hearing this. "Blake, you can't do this. You snooped through my emails." I did meticulously. I discovered credit card transactions. I also delved into our finances. The Seattle hotel in October, which you called a conference, was actually Pierce. The jewelry expenses on Valentine's Day weren't for me. Instead, they totaled $4,000 from our joint savings, spent on a clandestine relationship spanning 6 years. Esther read the email with trembling hands while Foster looked as if he'd been hit. Corinne quickly stood up, causing her chair to overturn. "This is absurdity. You're causing a scene over nothing." Over 6 years of deception and financial deceit, I have prepared my final document, the divorce papers. I had delayed signing them until now. I considered doing this quietly, but you enjoyed sharing our proposal story in public. You enjoyed humiliating me in front of your family, so I thought I'd reciprocate. I signed the documents right then and there at the dinner table, pushing them towards Corinne. "You turned our engagement into a jest," I told her. "Therefore, I'm proposing a new endeavor, divorce. Unlike my first proposal, I'm not anxious. I'm certain about what I desire, and that is to reclaim my life." The room remained quiet except for Esther's soft sobs. Foster was still reading the emails, his complexion growing redder with each sentence. Corinne was motionless, her gaze fixed on the divorce papers as if they might vanish if she blinked. "Blake," she eventually murmured. "We discussed this matter in private?" I responded. "After 6 years of publicly embarrassing me at family gatherings, I no longer consider our conversations confidential. As for the division of assets, your lawyer will be contacted about it. Given your financial infidelity, I am confident we can reach a fair agreement. Our marriage has been well documented, and I expect this arrangement will reflect your contributions. I'm leaving now." I didn't make a dramatic exit, but I did leave. I heard Foster calling out, "Corinne Marie, what on earth have you done?" The next 3 months were as bad as Barrett had predicted. Corinne attempted to prove the emails were fabricated, then she argued they were misinterpreted. Then she claimed I was abusive and manipulative, that she sought solace in Pierce due to my emotional detachment. Her attorney portrayed me as vengeful, unstable, a man who invaded his wife's privacy. However, I had the necessary paperwork. For 6 years, I possessed detailed financial records proving her exact expenditure of marital funds on hotels, gifts, and travels. I also had her own words from emails, including one where she openly discussed concealing expenses. Moreover, I had a record of her proposal anniversary mockery, too. My sister secretly recorded one of the dinner parties on her phone, which captured Corinne's derision of my stammering character. Judge Hayes, a meticulous woman in her 50s, scrutinized everything extensively, making Corinne's lawyer apprehensive. In one hearing, she looked over her glasses at Corinne and said, "Mrs. Blake, elucidate for me. You carried on an extramarital relationship for 6 years, spent approximately $18,000 of joint marital funds on that relationship, and your defense is that your husband was emotionally inaccessible." Corinne's lawyer began to retort, but Hayes intervened. "I'm questioning your client," she said. Unable to respond, Corinne remained silent. What response could one give? Justifying ridicule of a spouse's vulnerability during family gatherings, finding lying reasonable, accepting theft. Their divorce concluded in September. I obtained the house. Corinne was mandated to reimburse half the money she spent on Pierce from her individual assets. The judge observed in his decision that a pattern of financial deceit and emotional cruelty had been evident. It's rumored through mutual friends that Corinne and Pierce attempted to reconcile post-divorce, but only managed for 4 months. Apparently, a relationship constructed on deceit doesn't transition smoothly into genuine commitment. Who would have thought? Corinne's relationship with her parents never regained its footing. Foster supposedly declared she was unwelcome at family events until things were set right, though I'm uncertain what that might entail. Esther extended an apology letter that I chose not to answer. It wasn't her fault her daughter behaved as she did. I sold the house a year later. Overabundance of recollections, excessive spaces where I was the jest. I shifted to a compact dwelling in the city center, nearer to work with no past. The psychotherapist questioned me if I harbored vengeful feelings regarding my actions. I pondered over this for a considerable duration before responding. I endured 6 years of embarrassment, I eventually admitted. 6 long years where my weaknesses were exploited for amusement. She could have ceased each time I requested her to, but she persisted because it never crossed her mind that I'd take action. I gazed at Dr. Coleman. Therefore, no, I don't hold a sense of vengeance. I feel as though I finally stood up for myself, similar to how I had been supporting a relationship that was non-existent. It's been 2 years since that family dinner. I rarely think about Karen these days. When I share, it's not out of anger, but more like recounting a past car accident, a harrowing event that taught me caution, yet doesn't dictate my life. Now there's someone new in my life, Brooke. She's a veterinarian with a witty sense of humor and a logical approach to feelings. During our third date, I confided in her about my marriage, the mockery, the infidelity, the confrontation. She listened without interruption. Then she asked, "Did you ever propose again?" Never on the first occasion. No, it was humiliating enough. Good, because when you proposed to me, I felt it necessary to inform you that I will never reveal those details unless I choose to. Some things remain private. Some moments are meant only for the individuals involved. Sharing this information seemed to ease a tension in my chest I didn't realize was still there. We got engaged last month. In our living room, without an audience or a stage, two individuals made a commitment to create something genuine. I spoke without hesitation or trembling, confident in my words. When Brooke agreed, her first response was, "This is ours, not anyone else's." This is the proposal story I'll carry with me, not because of its dramatic flair or humor, but because it marked the moment I realized that love isn't about putting on a show or protecting someone else's image, but rather about being authentic and trusting the other person to handle your feelings delicately. Karen showed me what love is not. Brooke, on the other hand, is showing me what it is, and the anniversary, April 14th, no longer causes pain. It's just a date. I'm grateful for that difficult lesson. I learned about the distinction between being chosen and being convenient on that day. Not for the suffering, but for the lessons that followed. Learning that I could assert myself, realizing I didn't have to endure cruelty masquerading as humor. Understanding that leaving someone who belittled me wasn't surrender, but rather, it was finally choosing myself. If you find yourself in a relationship where someone makes you feel insignificant, where your weaknesses are their targets for ridicule, and where you frequently apologize for occupying space, know that things will not improve by waiting. They won't mend because you love them deeply or strive diligently enough or shrink yourself. Things improve when you decide you deserve better, and then you take the necessary steps to obtain it. That's the true narrative, not retaliation, not validation. Simply the gradual, arduous process of constructing a life where you're no longer the butt of jokes, where you finally become the person you aspired to be when you first believed in love. Final word count, 4,197 words.